Happy Wednesday, everybody, and welcome into GC Live here on Gamecock Central. Kendall Smith and Jack Veltri coming at you here today, and we have a lot to talk about. Not a game week for South Carolina like it has been in the past, but Jack, we still have so much to get to here today. South Carolina staying busy not only with the transfer portal, but a new offensive coordinator, lots of awards coming in for the South Carolina Gamecocks. And of course, you probably know this already, everybody listening, unless of course you've been sleeping under a rock, with South Carolina heading to the Citrus Bowl, which is super exciting. So we're going to get to a lot of that here today on GC Live. But first and foremost, Jack, how are you?
I'm doing great, Kendall. I always appreciate talking with you. But yeah, lots happened in South Carolina football over the last 10 days. Honestly, South Carolina athletics in general. But it's a busy time. And, hey, I'm glad the team got rewarded with a trip to the Citrus Bowl. That's going to be really exciting for them.
Yeah, where were you when you found out? What was the vibe for you, Jack?
So I had just left. I went to go see a movie earlier in the day. And keep in mind, I had a story pre-written with Gator Bowl, Citrus Bowl, Luedecke Bowl, all his options for a story that was going to come out later in the day whenever the announcement was made. I had caught wind that they were going to be going to the Gator Bowl, and I was like, okay, I'm going to just scrap the Citrus Bowl Tampa part of the stories, and I'll delete it and just go with the Gator Bowl because that's what it seems to be. And then I'm at Bojangles getting lunch, and I see a tweet from Brett McMurphy, who's usually spot on with all the bowl projections, saying that South Carolina is going to the Citrus Bowl. I hop out of line, park real quick, and I'm on my phone just typing from scratch that they're going to the Citrus Bowl, and it was crazy. So I'm glad they're going. Me and you both are pretty big into Disney and stuff, and we love Orlando. So now we're excited. So definitely hype.
Yes, I am so excited. Honestly, I wasn't really expecting it because earlier in the day, we were actually hearing reports that South Carolina would be going to the Gator Bowl. And I was texting you, I was texting Wes Mitchell, and Wes was like, you are not going to like what I'm hearing. He told me this a little bit earlier in the day. And I'm like, come on, like South Carolina cannot go back to the Gator Bowl. It can't happen. I mean, after the season they had this year compared to the season they had a couple of years ago, which was still fantastic. But this year, I just feel like, South Carolina didn't need to go back. They were just there. And they obviously had such a good year. So to hear the Citrus Bowl, and I think it makes such a huge statement for the Citrus Bowl to select South Carolina. That is the biggest thing here because traditionally it's been the highest ranked SEC team that does not make the college football playoff that would then go to the Citrus Bowl, which in this case would be Alabama. But South Carolina, obviously, with all of the excitement around the program and how well they've done to end the season, I think really, really deserves this opportunity. They're taking on Illinois. It's on New Year's Eve at 3:00 in Orlando, Florida. And I already bought my tickets. I'm so excited. I cannot wait. Jack, obviously, you will be there working. But I think it's a great opportunity for South Carolina to really showcase the program, showcase the team. And I know Shane Beamer is excited about it as well. I had the chance to see him at the Bronco Nagurski Trophy ceremony on Monday, and he's pumped up. So, yeah, it'll be exciting.
Yeah, and you're spot on about what you said before about the Citrus Bowl wanting South Carolina. Like, that was the main point that Beamer brought up over and over again talking to him on Sunday was that they wanted South Carolina, and that's a huge statement about the program. Like, easily they could have gone with Alabama or Ole Miss, whoever it might be. Heck, they could have even gone with Missouri if we're being honest, because Missouri quietly had a 9-3 season, but they went with the team that's playing the best football. They went with Lenore Sellers, who's a bright young star in this game. And also, I mean, it's not the most important – well, it is an important reason, but, South Carolina fans are going to show up and show out. Like, they are not – They see that South Carolina packed out the Gator Bowl 2 years ago, as we all know, and they will travel well for this. So kudos to South Carolina for a great year, and now they get rewarded with a great trip to a great bowl game, and we'll see what happens. It's about 3 weeks away, but it'll be a great New Year's out in Orlando for sure.
Yes, absolutely. It's actually funny. My brother went to law school at Ole Miss, and he was laughing at me all day because he was saying South Carolina is definitely going to the Gator Bowl. Y'all are going to the Gator Bowl. It would just make sense that Alabama goes to the Citrus Bowl, that Ole Miss goes to the Luedecke Bowl, and that South Carolina goes to the Gator Bowl just based on the rankings. And let me tell you, it was so nice to be able to sit there at the end of the day on Sunday and be like, wait, who's going to the Gator Bowl? Who's going to the Gator Bowl? Let me hear it again. So, anyways, but yeah, super excited about the Citrus Bowl and really, really happy for South Carolina. I think, obviously we're biased and we cover the team and have been around the program. We went to school at South Carolina, but I truly think they made the right decision. As you said, South Carolina fans are going to show up. They're going to be excited about this game. I think for Alabama fans, they think they got snubbed from the playoffs, and that's a whole other conversation. But they wouldn't necessarily maybe be as excited about the Citrus Bowl because it's not the playoffs. South Carolina fans also think that South Carolina was snubbed from the playoffs, but still, I think it's a different energy around the program that Gamecocks have right now. Because as South Carolina, you feel like you're ascending, and if you're Alabama, you feel like you're plateauing, if not getting worse as a program. And I don't think that's something that they're very excited about, Jack.
Yeah, look, that's a whole nother discussion with Alabama being snubbed and stuff. I don't think they got snubbed. I think the committee made the right decision. That's a whole nother discussion. I mean, look, I don't know what the turnout in Tampa is going to be between Alabama and Michigan. Obviously, it's a rematch of the Rose Bowl last year, CFP game. But I will say, look, South Carolina, I don't know how many Illinois fans are going to show up for that game because it is such a long trip. And then again, they might want to get out of the cold in Illinois and whatnot. But I definitely do think South Carolina is going to pack this place out. Like I fully expect it was like this going to Nashville a few weeks ago for the Vanderbilt game. They will pack out Disney, Universal. I mean, I expect to see Gamecock fans literally everywhere in Orlando. So it'll be a great week down there. And yeah, it should be really exciting. Kendall, when are you going to Orlando? Because you're going to Disney on the 1st, right?
Yes. So I am not going to Orlando until the 30th because I will actually be in Indiana for right after Christmas. So I'll be at an Indiana basketball game. Ooh. And then I'm going to go from Indiana to Orlando and be there the 30th and then spend a few days in Orlando, which I'm so excited about. I was just there. So were you, like 2 months ago.
Literally.
So we are back again. And Jack, I think, is going to go all out. You're going to do like most of the parks in one day or something crazy like that. I'm going to stick with Epcot just for the day.
Good choice. Good choice. Yeah, the plan is to go – I'll be there till the 2nd because I'm going to go girlfriend and I are going to Florida for that. So we'll go to Disney on the 1st. We'll park hop and we'll try to have some fun. But, yeah, it's going to be a great time out there, and I'm really looking forward to it, honestly, just to see some good football and obviously get into the warm weather.
Yes, I'm excited to see what the team does as well, because we saw when the team was here in Charlotte for the Duke's Mayo Bowl, they had the chance to go to the Charlotte Motor Speedway and do NASCAR racing. When they were in Jacksonville, they went to Top Golf and did a couple of things. So I don't know. We'll see what the team does. You would imagine they'd go to Disney, right, at the Citrus Bowl, but we'll get the full details on that shortly.
Yeah, it'll either be Universal or Disney. I'd be shocked if they go anywhere else. They could go to SeaWorld, they can go to Legoland. I mean, they can go literally anywhere, but I would say Disney or Universal would probably be the way to go.
Well, we will talk plenty more about the Citrus Bowl here on Gamecock Central, and so much coverage already on GamecockCentral.com, so be sure to check that out. But we have to get to some other news here today. Before we get there, though, Jack, we have a presenting sponsor of GC Live.
Yes, so Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans is right above us here on every GC Live show. If you are in the market to buy a home or you need help with your mortgage and you don't know where to begin, Clint Hammond can help you out. He'll take you step by step through the process of buying a home or helping you out with your mortgage. And he's been in the mortgage industry for a very long time now, well over 20 years. He's a lifelong Gamecock fan and a longtime supporter of Gamecock Central. So you know you're in good hands with Clint. So if you're interested, give him a call, 803-422-6797. The NMLS number for him is 71597, or you can go to ClintHammond.com.
Amazing. Okay, Jack, let's keep rolling right along here on Gamecock Central. I see we have questions, so we will certainly get to those in just a couple of minutes, but want to talk about South Carolina's new offensive coordinator, Mike Shula. We got that word yesterday, and, it was a very quick process from Dowell Loggins saying, okay, I'm going to take the head coaching job at Appalachian State University. Couple of days later, you hear from Shane Beamer and you get word that Mike Shula has received the internal promotion. He will now be the offensive coordinator for South Carolina. It didn't seem like, and we don't know this for a fact, but it didn't seem like there was a ton of consideration of other candidates. We don't necessarily know who Shane talked to or interviewed or whatnot, but it did seem like the process was fairly quick. You were not surprised at all by this hire, I would imagine, Jack.
No, I'm not surprised by this hire. I think it's the right move, and I think a lot of Gamecock fans can really agree on this, that hiring Mike Shula is the right decision. It's right in front of you, and I think the big thing with this hire is whenever it does officially become official, because again, Chris Clark of Gamecock Central does a great job, by the way, for us over at GC. He brought up the news yesterday, and the team hasn't obviously made it official yet or anything, so I'm sure that'll be coming relatively soon. But I will say, like, for the development of Lenore Sellers and this offense, I think you stick with what's been working, and that is having a guy that's been around this offense for a year and sticking with him moving forward, and that's Mike Shula, right? And the last thing you want to do, I think, is bring in a guy from the outside. And I know there's some great options out there, but the last thing you want to do is bring in someone who maybe isn't familiar with the area, has a different style of offense, and the last thing you want is to take Sellers specifically off that path that he's on right now. And I think this is the right move. Like, we're going to see a lot of good come out of this. Mike has obviously worked in the NFL for a very long time, had a lot of success. He also was the head coach at Alabama for a few years before Nick Saban was brought on board in Tuscaloosa. But I think he's got the track record. He's worked with really good quarterbacks that are kind of similar to Sellers in a lot of ways. The two names that I really think of when I think of Lenoris and who to compare him to, I think would be probably Cam Newton, obviously with the Panthers, who won an MVP, and then Josh Allen with the Bills. So I think there are a lot of similarities in the way Shula is able to utilize those guys in their play style, and I think that's what we could see moving forward with Lenoris. So I think everyone's probably really excited about this hire. We'll see what happens going forward. I know there was a question in the comments, would Shula call the plays in the Citrus Bowl or with Loggins? I think once it's officially official with the team and stuff, I think Shula will just be the one to call plays. At this point, I think you just let Loggins move on to App State full time. Like, that's his first head coaching job ever, and there's a lot on his plate to figure out. So, I think he's probably got to be more focused in on that rather than trying to split up his time between South Carolina and App State.
Yeah, absolutely. And, for you, Jack, with this decision, you put it great. I mean, you're getting a guy in who's already been with the program to be the offensive coordinator, and he understands the way that this offense runs, what works, what doesn't work. So my question to you is, what changes would you hope to see or maybe expect to see with Shula at the helm as offensive coordinator? Obviously, we don't anticipate that much will change maybe for the bowl game, and you have to realize all the great things that Lenora Sellers did, especially towards the end of this season. So you want to keep, a lot of that consistent heading into next year. But what would you maybe hope to see that Shula does different than Loggins?
I think you're right. I don't think anything's really going to change necessarily for the bowl game just because we're still in the same season. But I do think going into next year, you'd probably like to see, I think, a little bit more plays develop, right? And I think with Sellers, I think he covered up a lot of rough play calling from Loggins at times. I'm not saying Dowell didn't have a good season calling plays and stuff. There were definitely times where he was in his bag calling every play he wanted to. Like, it's gutsy to call a shovel pass for a game-winning touchdown against Missouri, obviously in that game, and then against Alabama as well for big gains, and one of which was a touchdown. But I do think, go back to the Clemson game specifically, and give Clemson credit for covering South Carolina's receivers up pretty well. There were plays that were meant to be passes that were really covered well, and Sellers had to take off and run. Is that necessarily D'Lo's fault? I don't know. But, I do think there were multiple times this year. You can go back and watch any of the tape. Sellers, when he was – look, there were plays where he was running for his life and kind of just running around and making a bad play turn into a good one. So I think I'd like to see more of – obviously, Sellers is still going to run a ton, but you'd like to see him have more plays that develop in the pocket rather than a bad play call that Sellers has to do something on his own with. I definitely do think he'll be fine for next year with Shula on his shoulder pretty much, but we'll have to see what happens. That would probably be the main thing for sure. And of course, having a consistent run game next year would also be a real big thing for Sellers.
So, Jack, I'm curious, when the news came out that Dowell Loggins is heading to App State, he will be their head coach. Were you surprised by that at all?
Yeah, I think a lot of people were. And I'm not surprised that Dowell was picked off to be a head coach somewhere else. I'm just surprised we didn't hear more about it, right? Typically with these things, you hear that there's a list of candidates and so-and-so's involved in the mix. It was literally just Dowell. And the thing was, I mean, Pete Thamel on ESPN on Twitter the other day, he was like the first to really bring it up that Dowell Loggins was the main target for the App State job. And the next day he gets the position. So I was a little surprised how quickly things kind of transpired. And look, I don't know how long App State and Dowell were talking for, but it was a little bit of a surprise just how quickly things went. And if I had to guess, like a coach that would have been hired first, I would have said someone like Clayton White or maybe even like a Torian Gray or something. Someone on the defensive end, I think for sure. But hey, D'Lo, I mean, look, he's entering a tougher situation out in Boone because App State, look, they're a historically good program, but they're coming off a 5-6 season. He's got his work cut out for him to get that team right and get them back to the promised land. But I do think it's a good move for him and his family. And honestly, maybe it comes at a good time where, look, his tenure was up and down at South Carolina, I think, in terms of play calling. I think this is maybe a good time to see what Shula can do, and maybe it'll be a nice change of pace.
Someone has a question here. Any chance that Shula was already calling plays there towards the end of the season? I have lots. You can go first.
No, I don't know. I've thought about this because you see like on SEC Inside, you hear Shane Beamer talking to Shula during an important point of that Missouri game. And that makes you think, okay, maybe he is calling plays. It wouldn't shock me if that were the case post bye week going into what was it, the A&M game, like that final month of the year, those final 5 games. It wouldn't shock me if Shula was probably the one calling the plays, or maybe it was more of a collective effort and not just Dow. I have no evidence of that. But that is just my thought process towards that whole case. And look, Shula's been an OC before. He's been a head coach. He's been a quarterbacks coach. He knows what he's doing. And he's also on the sideline with Sellers, and he's able to get a whole different vantage point of what's going on with the offense compared to Dow, who's just up in the press box. So I definitely would like to believe that Shula had a little bit more input as the season went on when the offense really wasn't clicking.
A couple other questions that I want to get to here. And, a lot of people have talked about Lenoris Sellers and his development as a quarterback. Credit a lot of that to Dowell Loggins, but credit a lot of that to Shula as well. And another question on here is, do we fill his position, or is it needed at this point? Obviously, the senior offensive assistant coach for South Carolina prior to the promotion of becoming offensive coordinator. You've got a lot of analysts on staff if you're South Carolina. So what do you think, Jack?
I don't really think you need to necessarily fill it unless you can find the right coach out there that you want to bring in. By all means, go for it. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the same role either. It could always be maybe a senior defensive analyst or something like that. Or maybe it is another offensive guy. I don't know. I mean, look, I think you definitely could. I don't think it's necessarily required by any means, but if there is the right coach out there that you want to bring in, maybe it's someone to help out Shula. Maybe we'll see what Shula ends up doing, because I am interested to see. I think we have a question about that somewhere. Would Shula call plays on the field, or would he be up in the press box like Dowell was? Either way, I think you probably want another set of eyes somewhere, whether it's on the field or in the box. But I do think for right now, at least for this bowl game, it's probably just Shula without that position being filled. But I think maybe going into next season, you try to fill it.
Yeah. Another solid question here about the potential of Loggins maybe taking some coaches with him to App State. I think that's a fear, because you've seen it happen obviously in the past with South Carolina when you have coaches leave, whether it's for other coordinator jobs or head coaching jobs, taking guys from the school that they came from and bringing them on their staff. Do you worry about that at all, Jack?
I would say yes, for sure. But the difference is this isn't a P4 program. This is a group of 5 school. that Dowell is now out or at. And I do think that, I mean, it depends on the position that the guy is in at South Carolina. This question's in reference to Mike Furry, who's the wide receivers coach at South Carolina. I mean, I don't know. I mean, he's in a good situation at Carolina. He's doing a really great job recruiting. I mean, Shane Beamer just said the other day on National Signing Day that Mike was doing a grand slam job in recruiting, bringing in so many wide receivers and stuff. So I don't know if he would want to just leave right away to go to App State for a group of 5 OC job. I know it's technically like a higher position and probably more money, but at the end of the day, it's still a G5 spot. It'd be different if Dowell, let's say, got hired at a Power 4 program and he asks some of these guys to go with him. Like, it's possible, but I think the likelihood is it's probably not as great of a bunch of guys leaving. I don't really see it right now. I think Dowell, he's got so many NFL connections and stuff and around the industry in college football that I think he'll hire external guys, but it wouldn't shock me if he tried to, pick off a guy or two from this staff.
Yeah, I mean, is there anybody else, and not necessarily coaches that will follow logins to App State, but I mean, anybody else that comes to your mind, Jack, from this coaching staff that you're a little bit worried about potentially leaving, obviously due to their success or whatever it might be? Who else comes to your mind that you think, okay, this might be someone we should prepare ourselves, not, saying anything is happening at the moment or anything will happen, but, who are some people that come to your mind in terms of that?
Yeah, and I think this question right here from Big Red kind of goes hand in hand with what you just brought up, Kendall. Big Red asks, would having multiple coaches leave at the same time harm the culture that Beamer has built at Carolina? I don't think so. I don't think it would because, again, Shane Beamer's at the top of everything, and he is the one that instills the culture, and the coaches kind of just follow suit and have the same ideals. But I do think it would probably be – it's possible that multiple coaches could go. I'm not saying anything's off the table. If I had to pinpoint – I couldn't really pinpoint one specific coach. If I'm going to take a guess, maybe it would be some of the analysts maybe some younger guys that are looking for that next step. And maybe it's not a coordinator position necessarily, but maybe it's an assistant coach that maybe isn't like the DC or OC right now. Maybe it's someone that coaches like tight ends or DBs or receivers or something like that, or even just an analyst, like I said. But I wouldn't expect any big fish to leave for a group of 5 school. You're not going to see Clayton White leave South Carolina to go be the DC at App State. You're not going to see, I don't think you're going to be seeing Torian Gray leave South Carolina to go be the defensive coordinator at App State. And I think it's the same deal for anyone that's a bigger figure in the coaching staff. But again, I think it would probably be more so the guys that we don't usually talk about a ton, like the analysts and stuff. But we'll have to see what happens there.
Final thoughts from you, Jack, on the OC promotion, on Loggins leaving before we start to talk about the transfer portal just a little bit?
Yeah, we do have another question here. I'm trying to figure out where it was at. Let's see. I think it was this one right here from Big Red. Do we know if our new OC is coaching the offense or will Loggins coach? I think we got that question answered earlier, actually, but I would assume it's going to be Shula. But I think overall, I think it's fine. I think what they're doing here with Shula is great. At the same time, losing D'Lo, yeah, it's not ideal necessarily, especially after you just had some late success this season. But the good news is you got a guy in here that can continue to run what this offense built up this year, and maybe Shula does it better. I think, at least in my opinion, I think Shula is a better overall coach than Dowell. He has a good and probably better track record. I can't really name much success Dowell had at the NFL level. He worked with the Chicago Bears, Jets, and Browns and teams like that, and the Titans. His big thing was being around when Chris Johnson was with the Titans or Jay Cutler with the Bears. Chris Johnson was great and all with the Titans, but Jay Cutler isn't really some household name or anything. So with Shula, he worked with Cam Newton, he worked with David Gerard, who was with the Jags and had some really nice years developing under Shula. And then, of course, with Lenoris now and then Josh Allen, the track record's there for Shula. and I think we're going to see a lot of success next season.
All right, Jack. Well, before we start talking about the transfer portal and, of course, all of the awards that South Carolina has been winning over this last week, we've got another sponsor to say a big thank you to.
That's right. I want to talk to you guys about our good friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in all of North America. They're the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. So instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections. And then, of course, you watch the winnings roll in. Prize Picks has quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types. It's what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. I've been using Prize Picks for a few years now, been recently using it a little bit more, and it's a great time to be using it for NFL. College football may seem like it's wrapping up, but in reality, you still have the college football playoff to go, bowl games. You, of course, have NBA, college basketball, hockey. The options are really endless once it comes to Prize Picks. So would definitely recommend using this app if you want to get in on the action. So just go to prizepicks.com or download the Prize Picks app. Use the code on screen GC, that stands for Gamecock Central, to receive a guaranteed $50 once you play $5 in lineups.
Thank you, Jack. It's crazy. I feel like everything is happening in the world of baseball right now, but there's no baseball being played. It's winter meetings right now and lots of trades, and Jeff Passan is working overtime. Right now.
So, yeah. Big overtime. Yeah, a lot of crazy things have happened.
Big move for your Yankees yesterday after losing on Soto.
Yeah,
to the New York Mets of all people.
Yeah, look, I figured the Mets were going to probably end up getting him just because they have an owner that is willing to spend whatever it takes to get who he wants. And look, I'm not going to fault the Yankees for trying their best. I mean, $760 million is a lot of money to offer one player. So I'm glad they're putting it towards different usages and stuff. So we'll see what happens. But I'm excited with where things are going in the post-Soto era.
It'll be here before we know it. Baseball season will, and Gamecock baseball season as well, which I'm sure we will talk about more on GC Live as it gets a little bit closer, but it is right around the corner. Still talking all about football, though, here on GC Live, and a lot of awards for South Carolina, several being announced here today. Shane Beamer, Coach of the Year for the SEC. Kyle Kennard, Defensive Player of the Year for the SEC, according to the AP. We actually received SEC awards today. Freshman of the Year, Lenora Sellers, Defensive Player of the Year, Kyle Kennard. I was at the Bronco Nagurski Trophy Award on Monday. Kyle Kennard won that as well. So, I mean, I'm not even getting everything right now, but wow, what a season for South Carolina. And really nice to see that they're receiving these accolades and this attention because so many people on that team so deserving of it.
Yeah, most definitely. I think a lot of these guys really deserve it. And, kudos to you for being at the Nagurski ceremony the other day, because that was really cool seeing, obviously, Eli Drinkowitz kind of give Shane some props and stuff, which is really cool. But obviously, look, this is a great time for South Carolina with everything going on in Gamecock athletics. It's nice to see guys reap the rewards for what they did this season. Obviously, Kennard is going to rack up a ton of these awards. I feel like there are probably a few guys that got snubbed off the all-SEC teams. I even feel like Shane Beamer, I know you mentioned the AP Coach of the Year for the SEC, but in terms of the coaches, SEC Coach of the Year, that ended up going to Vanderbilt's Clark Lee. And I made it a point on Twitter to mention that because I was a little shocked that, look, Vanderbilt has definitely exceeded expectations. Like, I did not think they were going to be good this year. I think I would have had them for like 3-4 wins maybe. But they went 6-6, and we're going to give the SEC Coach of the Year to a guy that led his team to 6 wins. Like, when would that ever happen? And yes, I know Vanderbilt has been the laughing joke of the SEC, the laughing stock of the SEC for years now. But it's crazy that Shane Beamer, who went 5-7 last year, took his team to being 9-3 and a top 15 team in the country. I mean, that looks like Coach of the Year to me, unless I'm missing something. But I get it. Like, Vanderbilt has been bad, and you want to give the coach who got his team to 6 wins some kudos, but at the same time, I would have gone with Beamer, just quite honestly.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, Shane Beamer is deserving of that. And obviously, major kudos to Clark Lee and Vanderbilt for what they were able to accomplish this year, but what South Carolina was able to do as well, especially with preseason projections. Nobody expected South Carolina to make it to this point, let alone be a team that was considered for the college football playoff. So I agree with that as well. But hey, we don't get to vote. So we don't necessarily get to say, we just have to deal with the results and obviously talk about them here on GC Live. But we have received so many questions about the transfer portal, and I know we will continue to receive questions about the transfer portal. So I want to get into this a little bit, and obviously we are going to point you always back to GamecockCentral.com because we have an entire headquarters for the transfer portal where Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark, Jack Veltri, the whole entire crew are doing such a fantastic job of keeping that updated. I mean, down to the minute. I think it was updated today at 124 or something like that. Like, yeah, 124. So Wes will actually put like the exact minute that it's been updated. So yeah, and it is important to do that because in today's world of college football, it is literally every single minute that something different is happening. So we're updating you on who's visiting South Carolina, who's leaving South Carolina, who South Carolina might have interest in. And there are already a few guys that have confirmed visits to South Carolina. We obviously have guys that have announced they are leaving South Carolina. So Jack, since you have been so active in the transfer portal headquarters on GamecockCentral.com, can you give me a Spark Notes version? I mean, obviously I know, but for everybody watching, let's have a Spark Notes version of what has happened over the last few days transfer-wise for South Carolina.
Yeah, and this was the question brought up right here. How many have hit the portal and who? I'll just run through the names real quick since it's nothing too crazy, but you got Elijah Davis, Jamal Weiss, CJ Adams, Robbie Ashford, DeBron Gatling, Connor Cox, Nick Elksness, DJ Braswell, Reed McKeska, Mo Kaba, Nye Mansell, and then obviously Bengali Kamara quite a long time ago. So no one really too detrimental to the program where it's like, oh my gosh, you're losing this guy. I think the two biggest names that you are, losing to the portal, I'd have to say are Robbie Ashford, who entered yesterday. That was put out in a report by On3's Pete Nakos. And I will add to that, I saw Robbie's mom posted somewhere on, I think it was Mike Yuva's Twitter and the replies or something that Robbie will still play in the bowl game. I know we've gotten questions about that. I'm not necessarily sure how that exactly works because we haven't really seen many situations like that. It wouldn't shock. I think there's only been one case where I remember a guy doing that, and I think that might have been maybe a Florida quarterback. I think maybe Emory Jones back in the day when a few years ago when he was going to transfer and he decided to play his final game before transferring. I don't know why he would do that necessarily. He's not going to play in the bowl game, but hey, more power to him if he wants to finish out his time at South Carolina the right way. But I think the only other really, if you even want to call it big loss, I think would probably a lot of people have been asking this season about DJ Braswell and stuff. He just never got the playing time, and he was still a part of the team all year. But I do think this was the time for him to go on and try to find a new home, and we'll see what happens. And people have been asking, is it possible Robbie goes to App State? It's very much possible. If his connection with D'Lo is that good, which it seems like it is, it wouldn't shock me because, look, I don't think Robbie is at the point in his career where, maybe I'm wrong on this. Maybe this is more of just a gut feel, but he's been at Oregon, Auburn, and South Carolina, 3 big schools. And, he's played a bit at Auburn, didn't play at all at Oregon. He played a little bit at South Carolina. But I think at this point in his career, it might be the better move to go down the group of 5 route, go play a bunch, see what you can do. And I think it would be his team next year pretty much under D'Lo, and he's already familiar with the system. So that would make the most sense for me, and it wouldn't shock me if that were the case. Now, outside of that, to give a more Cliff Notes version of what's been going on, again, I'm not going to reveal many of the names or anything that South Carolina is in on because that's more of go to GamecockCentral.com, and that's basically subscription stories right there for our subscribers. But they are seemingly in on a lot of guys. I think defensively, you're seeing that for sure. They've got a bunch of guys set up for visits. I think five players, in fact, are coming on visits between tomorrow and next week. And a lot of them are from smaller schools. You got one P4 in here, but I do think South Carolina, if there's anything they're good at, it's finding the diamonds in the rough. It's finding the guys that not a lot of schools out there are going to be paying attention to and going after. And South Carolina turns them into studs. Like you could see Torselli Simpkins came from NC Central and had a great year. You've also got, obviously, I just lost my train of thought, Demetrius Knight coming from Charlotte. That's a G5 school, and look at the impact he had this year. Obviously, Kyle Kennard came from Georgia Tech, but he had a great year and a standout type of SEC defensive player of the year performance. I do think, to kind of sum it up, though, I think South Carolina's going to go after the right guys. They're going to attack the portal for sure, and they'll fill the spots. I wouldn't be too worried about that. Now it's just about, okay, going into next year, how do the guys that they will eventually land translate over onto the field, and can they provide that sort of same impact as what they got this year, which is going to be hard to do, but it's not impossible.
Yeah, we've seen South Carolina hit some major home runs with the transfer portal for as long as it has existed. So obviously hoping for that more this year. You just had a really solid signing day. South Carolina did just last week, but we know that that's only 50% of what South Carolina needs to do in terms of getting ready for next season and recruiting the portal. Such a big part of that. And as Jack mentioned, we do have specific names of players that South Carolina will have on visits over on GamecockCentral.com in our transfer portal headquarters. Plus, Wes and I always do a recruiting rundown every single week where we will give you more in-depth information on what to expect, who South Carolina is trying to go after, et cetera, et cetera. I think we had a question up here, and this is a good one. If you're South Carolina, what do you want to focus on a little bit more? February is your next signing day if you're South Carolina, and we know that the early signing period in December is typically when you see more of your guys from high school sign. But what are you trying to go after more here if you're South Carolina?
I think you do a little bit of both, and that is in reference to the portal and traditional recruiting. By traditional recruiting, we're talking about high school. So I think you go after a little bit of both. You try to find, obviously, in the portal, you're kind of just going after whoever you feel like is the best fit, regardless of eligibility. In a lot of cases, the guys that South Carolina brought in for this season, they are one-year guys. So a lot of them are moving on to the next step in their life, whether it's Kyle Kennard, Demetrius Knight, Simpkins, all those guys I just talked about before, and many more. But I do think you try to go after the right guys in the portal. If they have more eligibility, great. You can have them for extended periods of time, like a Vandrevius Jacobs, for example, and other guys like that, like a Brady Hunt. But you also want to have your traditional recruiting. Like you can't just you could build a team just off the portal. We've seen it before, but it's great to have your own homegrown talent in there as well, because I think South Carolina's going to have a lot of it. They do a great job recruiting in this state from the high school ranks, and we're going to see a lot of these guys like Malik Clark, Cutter Woods, guys like that, Jordan Gidron. A lot of names like that are going to be able to make an impact at some point in their college careers at South Carolina. But you definitely do want to have a good mix of both, because you need transfers that have more experience to kind of lead the way for the young guys that are coming in.
Well, Wes Mitchell said he feels like South Carolina is off to a great start after early signing day last week. But when you look at spots that South Carolina needs to fill in, or they need to really go hard after here in the transfer portal, where specifically are you looking, Jack, from a position standpoint that you feel like South Carolina needs to improve on?
Yeah, this is kind of a good question to kind of coincide with that. Do we have the depth where we won't need to lean as hard on the portal? Yes, there are positions where South Carolina should be in a good spot. Obviously, quarterback is number one because you have Lenore Sellers. And I did write a story earlier today on GC about what the quarterback position looks like for South Carolina besides Lenore Sellers for next year. I think a lot of people have been taking it as, oh my gosh, like South Carolina after Lenore Sellers. Like, no, I meant it more like, what does it look like besides him? But I think quarterback would be probably one that you want to get a backup in there. I don't know who would want to come to South Carolina just to hold a clipboard and be a backup potentially. But there are guys that are looking to kind of be a part of a good situation, and maybe South Carolina is that spot for them. I think also you want to probably you could literally go just about any position here. Offensive line, I think you're going to need to go get. You're losing 3 starters next year or after this season. You're going to want to go get at least 1 to 2 guys because you'll have some young guys coming up, but you would like to see another veteran in there to kind of help things out. And I know South Carolina has definitely been recruiting hard in the transfer portal for offensive line. Defensive line as well is another big spot that you're going to need to replenish a lot and bring new guys in. I definitely see that being the case. Linebacker, obviously, you're losing all 3 starters with Bam Martin Scott, Debo Williams, and Demetrius Knight. And then we'll see what happens with Nicky Manwari. I'm interested to see if he ends up turning pro. He is a junior. He definitely could do so. We'll have more definitive answers on all of we know the positions that South Carolina is going to need to fill, but there are guys that are going to come back for next year that we just don't know the names of yet. I mean, Shane Beamer's already said he's had conversations with guys about that. So once we kind of know where everyone stands with what they're doing next year, for guys that do have eligibility left, we'll have a better idea of, okay, what positions do you need to attack? But there are a lot for sure.
And I think the next question when you say that people would think is, well, when do you think that South Carolina will have a clear image? Obviously, you're never going to have a 100% clear image, but when do you think South Carolina will kind of be like, all right, this is where we're thinking we stand at this point?
Well, to be honest, I mean, look, this is my first time covering a bowl game for GC, so I'm kind of just going through this process kind of blind right now and kind of just figuring it out as we go. But I think from what I've read, I've looked back at old stories from 2 years ago and stuff just to kind of get a frame of reference from what was written during the bowl period and stuff, because obviously South Carolina didn't make a bowl game last year. I think you're going to see guys probably announce what their move is probably sometime, I would say maybe next week, maybe in the weeks leading up to the bowl game, because you're going to have bowl practice coming up here soon. And by then, I think a lot of guys are going to know what they want to do. And we don't know exactly when bowl practice begins in Columbia. I'm sure that'll begin maybe later this week or early next week with under 3 weeks to go now until the Citrus Bowl. But I do think you're going to see some guys, most guys probably opt in for this game, decide to come back, play one more game at Carolina. I'd be shocked if outside of the main guys, maybe Rocket, Kennard, guys like that I could totally see, maybe Nicky, probably guys like that maybe opting out. I'd be shocked if most of the starters end up opting out. A lot of them are going to play, especially the guys that have been here for a long time now, like Boogie and Tonka. Guys like that I think are going to end up staying and playing in this bowl game. But we'll see what happens. We should hopefully have news on that relatively soon. We've actually seen a few guys sign with Garnet Trust for next year and stuff. You've seen Kason Henry, Tro Baugh, Jawarn Howell. So I expect to see more of that trickle out in the coming days and weeks. But it should be really interesting to see what direction a lot of these guys decide to go.
We talk about guys opting out of the bowl game. We'll see what happens. But just as it stands right now and what you see with both rosters, with South Carolina and Illinois, you think South Carolina has the upper hand in this one, Jack?
I definitely do think so. I did a little bit of a scouting report on GC about Illinois, and I do know that their top receiver, Pat Bryant, who is basically at 1,000 yards this season receiving, he's not going to be playing in the bowl game. He already opted out. So that's their top target for Illinois taken off the board. And it's interesting. You have, Luke Altmyer's the quarterback there at Illinois. I was watching a video yesterday to kind of get a gauge of who this guy is and stuff. He was the backup to Matt Corral at Ole Miss. And when Corral obviously went down in the Sugar Bowl, his final game, Altmyer was the guy to come in and play. And I think many people thought that would have been the guy to take over in Lane Kiffin's offense the following year. But Jackson Dart ended up transferring there. And we know how the story goes with Dart being the guy and Altmyer transferring to Illinois. So it'll be interesting to see what South Carolina does here. I think they should win this game pretty, I don't want to say easily, but I think they're double-digit favorites. it wouldn't shock me if South Carolina ran away with this thing.
I do not need sadness like I experienced at the Gator Bowl, because I was feeling great at the Gator Bowl after the first half, and then all of a sudden it wasn't so fun towards the end of that game. I want to put this on here because I just never thought, like I have to say this, I never thought I'd live in a world
Oh my
where
God.
Bill Belichick becomes the head coach at UNC. I don't know if you ever thought that you would live in a world where that happens, but
No,
here we are.
No. You know, at first I thought it was more of a gimmick to where UNC was doing Bill a favor to get him an opportunity to interview, show that he still wants to coach, obviously, and he does. Like, I think he would obviously love to coach at the NFL level. But then I hear Bill talking on, like, I think it was like the Pat McAfee show the other day and some other podcasts where he's got a plan. Like, he's going to come into this thing trying to make UNC like I don't know what the right term would be, but like the stepping stone to getting to the NFL. And if anyone knows how to run a program like a pro team, it would be Bill. And I think it could translate over very well. Here's an underrated factor I don't think many people have thought about. Keep in mind, his son, Steve, is the DC over at Washington. And you've seen a lot of what Bill would do with the Pats and stuff translate over to Washington, where they kind of run it like that. And that Washington's going to be a good program, I think, going into the future in the post-Kalen DeBoer era, since he's at Alabama now. But it wouldn't shock me if we see Bill have success at UNC. I know he's basically the same age as Mac Brown, and that kind of contradicts what UNC wants to do. But I do think overall, I think Bill can get it done. It wouldn't shock me. I like what he's doing. Did we ever get to see a situation where Beamer coaches against Belichick, though? I was looking at the schedules for the future the other day. I know for a fact South Carolina plays UNC in the regular season. Maybe I want to say like late 2020s. I'm going to take a quick gander, but 2028, South Carolina plays UNC in the season opener at Willie B, and 2029, they'll go to Chapel Hill for the season opener. So I don't know if Bill's going to be coaching till then. I do think it's possible, though. If not in a bowl game and Bill's still around and coaching and Shane's still at South Carolina, yeah, it's very much possible.
I can't believe it. Like, I cannot believe
that
has become a reality. It is shocking. Like, I saw it. I'm like, like, I don't see that happening. And then yesterday, I'm like, okay, like, this is probably going to happen. And now we're hearing, obviously, these major reports from super credible sources that it is happening. So, yeah, there we go. I mean, you never know what can happen in the world of college football. I think that is the lesson we have all learned over the last few years with how crazy it can be. And now with the transfer portal and NIL and everything else, I mean, it just continues to get more and more and more interesting. Thank you for this comment, by the way. It's so nice.
If you're not smashing the like button, what are you doing right now? It literally takes 5 seconds. Like RL says, 1 second. Hop off the stream, pause it for a second. We're not going anywhere. Hit the like button. While you're at it, also hit the subscribe button to Gamecock Central's YouTube page. I mean, look, it's free. It takes you 2 seconds. Come on. Like, everyone wants instant gratification here and everything to take 2 seconds. There you go. So let's see it.
Yes, we would certainly appreciate it. Jack, I mean, I feel like so much that we had a hit on here today on GC Live. Oh my gosh. Is there anything that you feel like we didn't hit or didn't talk about enough? I mean, we're talking about a new offensive coordinator, the transfer portal, Bill Belichick, South Carolina going to the Citrus Bowl, South Carolina winning so many awards. I mean, gosh, it's been a busy week. No games, still a busy week.
It's kind of refreshing not to talk about, like, because the last time we were on here, we talked about the college football playoff snub and all that. And that was, that wasn't really, I mean, it's always fun to talk on here, but like to talk about such a low moment for the program like that, it's nice and refreshing to talk about all these good things going on right now. And I think the future is bright for South Carolina. Look, not to rehash the past too much, but obviously 9-3 this year, you didn't make the playoff. Okay, look, it's not the end of the world. This could really be step one in where you go from here. Like, you got your offensive coordinator now, Mike Shula. You'll have that continuity. Shane Beamer's still at the helm. And I think things are heading in the right direction. South Carolina, we're going to see what they do in the portal, but they had a great recruiting class coming in. And I think the future is really bright for this program. So I expect to see the first of many years where South Carolina is in contention for this thing. And in some cases, finally getting over that hump and getting into the playoff. And maybe at some point they'll get into the SEC title game. It's really not that far-fetched at this point.
No, it's certainly not. And I think something that we didn't bring up about Shula, but I think it's important to note, is that because so much is happening right now in the world of South Carolina football, I think it says a lot about Shane Beamer's hiring ability and just what he has created with this staff, that he felt so comfortable promoting a guy within and doing it in such a quick period of time. I mean, it is so busy. So if you're looking at a few-week process for Shane Beamer to hire an offensive coordinator, you're trying to get guys in the transfer portal. Meanwhile, at the same time, you're still trying to get high school guys to sign potentially in February. And then you're looking at practicing for a bowl game and getting ready for all of these things. Like, I think that is another underrated aspect of this as well. It's like, it was a very drama-free process for South Carolina to be able to find their next offensive coordinator, a guy that already knows what's going on. And I think that's especially important at this time of the year specifically, because you look at all that South Carolina has going on and there is so much to do, that it really, again, speaks to what Shane Beamer has created and the culture and the guys that he has, where he feels confident enough, and another member of his staff and an analyst to be able to step up and take that position, Jack.
Yeah, literally. Like, that's such a nice thing that, again, it's not an issue if South Carolina decided, hey, like, let's go look externally for our next OC and stuff and go through a whole hiring process. There are great coordinators out there that would love to come work at South Carolina, work with Lenore Sellers and stuff. Heck, I think even in some cases, we'll see how the whole Mike Shula tenure plays out. But it wouldn't have surprised me maybe if we're feeling a little bit better about maybe some other guys coming in here and doing great things. But I think right now you play it safe, you stick with what's working, and you got a great quarterback under center for the next year, maybe 2, maybe 3 at most. And I do think they're in a good position to where you can ride this thing out, continue what's been working. And the good news is, for as much as you're losing on defense, like Jeff 2001 says here, you are getting a lot back on offense. Like, I think really you're only really losing Rocket, maybe potentially. We don't even know that for sure yet, because I think he's got another year of eligibility. But you're losing 3 of your offensive linemen and Josh Simon. Like, other than that, pretty much sure you're retaining a good bit of your offense. So you have a chance to make this, maybe next year's the year where the offense carries everything and the defense is kind of that, what the offense was for South Carolina this year, where they come through in specific moments and stuff, which wouldn't be a bad thing necessarily. But I think Carolina's in a nice position, like I've said many times, and I think Shula is the right guy for the job.
In a perfect world, the defense and the offense are both just holding up their end of the bargain, and that is obviously the hope and the goal for South Carolina. We talk about how busy these next few weeks are for South Carolina. What does that look like, Jack? Like, what does it look like the next few weeks if you're Shane Beamer trying to get ready for this bowl game, simultaneously trying to get guys from the portal, et cetera?
Well, you already started by hiring your next offensive coordinator, even though it's not made officially official by South Carolina yet. But I do think the next steps here are portal. You're bringing guys in on visits. As we know, they got a bunch of guys coming in over these next few days. And then from there, it's trying to get them signed and stuff. And it's a quick process. Like, I was talking with Shane last week at the AD press conference and stuff afterwards. And I was asking him, like, how much different is the process with the portal compared to high school recruiting? And he was basically saying you have 24 hours to kind of figure everything out, to get to know the guy, get him on campus. Because, again, South Carolina and every school around the country can't be going on in-home visits and stuff and going to visit guys. They got to come, the players have to come to them, which is kind of nice, I think, actually, for Shane to kind of be around. So he'll be in the office this month and stuff, and they'll obviously be starting up bowl practice here relatively soon. Once we know a set schedule of what the deal is, we'll post that on Gamecock Central for sure. But I do know that Shane was saying it the other day, they'll be heading to Orlando on the 26th. I would presume they begin bowl practice in Orlando the next day on the 27th, and then I'll be out there that entire week. So all leading up to the 31st, which a chance to win 10 games, which has only happened 4 times in program history. So it would be it'd be really cool to see what they can do.
It certainly would. And Jack, the good news is hopefully the team, since they're leaving on the 26th, won't start practice till the 27th. For the Gator Bowl, we had it where South Carolina started practice on the 26th. So I got to meet Colin Taylor.
They left on the 25th, though, right?
Yes, they left on the 25th.
Yeah.
I did not. I left it. I wanted to like be at my house all day on Christmas, and I left at like 3:00 in the morning to be at Collins by 5 a.m.
Jeez. Yeah, I'm glad I'm not going to have to do that.
Yes.
No.
So that is a good thing. And, you know, we know it's going to be a blast. And South Carolina fans, I mean, we're already getting the emails like the ticket allotment has been used. They're asking for more tickets. So, I mean, that is massive and huge. And yeah, I do think it will very much be a home crowd, home game environment for South Carolina at the Citrus Bowl. That's what I expect. And I can't wait. It's going to be like a big party down in Orlando, Florida to ring in the new year for South Carolina. And Jack,
it's going to be a lot of fun.
And I think Wes will be there too. I'm not going to speak for him, but I'm 99% sure.
Yeah. So you're going to get him to go drink around the world at Epcot?
I'm going to try to get him to come to Epcot. I already told him months ago. I said, if South Carolina makes the Citrus Bowl, we got to go to Epcot. So it'll be a whole GC reunion because we're going to get Jack out there as well.
Shoot.
Everybody's going to be there.
Let me know. I'll be there. So should be a lot of fun out there.
Maybe we can get Yuva to come from Rhode Island.
Oh my gosh. That'll be that's a taller task, but hey, it's not impossible, I guess.
It is certainly not, and we are so excited. So much more to talk about with South Carolina's bowl game, with the transfer portal, with everything in the world of Gamecock football. So we will keep you all updated on that over on GamecockCentral.com, on social media at Gamecock Central, and we are here every single Wednesday, myself and Jack, doing an edition of GC Live. This one was super fun, Jack, and very, very, I don't want to use the word chaotic, I guess, very, very just busy. There was a lot to talk about. So we got to it all and more over on GamecockCentral.com. So be sure to check it out. But Jack, thank you so much once again for everything. You're the best. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Thank you for all of the questions. We appreciate all of you and hope that you have an amazing rest of your day. So for Jack Veltri, I am Kendall Smith. This has been GC Live here on Gamecock Central. We will see you all soon. Bye.